Green taking on Chicago. Get some Celtic stuff for you coming up in a little bit. I reacted to the Bruins last night. I'll recap it today because I've done more information. And they are giving up goals like you could not believe. They're on a torrid pace right now to not only at least compete with the franchise record of goals given up in a season. I'll give you some of those numbers coming up. And the Patriots. Everyone's very interested in what's going on at Senior Bowl. It's the first time I think I've ever heard this station, or at least this show. I don't know. Jim's walking out. Thumbs up or not. Have you guys ever talked Senior Bowl before? Just Bedard. Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it to that then. But some Patriot stuff out there as well. And, I found out a little nugget today about more nepotism going on with the Patriots. So I'll share that for you coming up in a bit. Phone number 617-779-0985. Just some notes on the Bruins. I'm running out of things to say about the hockey team that's in Boston. So many things are wrong, I can't point to one thing that can fix this or turn it around. I've reached on many takes before, specifically when it comes to the Bruins. And all I've leaned on is normally they have started so fast and got out the gate really quick to where maybe this year it's a slow start and then they finish a little bit better. So that's where I at least have reached pretty hard on that one. And the slow start this year, finish strong, I don't know if it's on the table. They're in the worst possible spot right now. They're good enough to be a playoff team. They're just not bad enough to blow the whole thing up. Cam Neely recently discussed the idea of two paths as the trade deadline is approaching. The only path for this team is to start looking ahead for a long-term plan for the future. I don't know who the next coach should be. I don't even know. I definitely don't think Don Sweeney should be back. And I'm curious about Cam Neely's future. But this version of the Bruins has no leadership. They can't score goals. They can't prevent other teams from scoring goals either. And they score them in handfuls. The Bruins have lost their identity. There is no solution in sight. The identity had been defense and goaltending. We all know that the team moved on from Linus Ullmark, freeing up salary cap space, and in return received Mark Kastelik, Eunice Corpusalo, and a first-round pick. That trade broke up the NHL's best goaltending tandem between him and Jeremy Swayman. We know the story after that. The team went into camp without an extension for their goaltender, their coach, or their captain, Brad Marchand. Swayman went into business for himself, eventually agreed on an 8-year, $66 million contract. That happened on October 6th. He wasn't ready to start the season. He was a part of the slow start and the early struggles, and those struggles resulted in the team moving on from coach Jim Montgomery. There was a slight spark when Joe Sacco took over this year, but there's been persistent issues defensively and on special teams, not to mention they can't score goals. But giving up goals has been another thing. They lost to the Buffalo Sabres last night. The Buffalo Sabres did something they haven't done in years. The Sabres had two players score a hat trick in the same game. That hadn't been done since 2008 when Derek Roy and Drew Stafford did it. And they did it against the Atlanta Thrashers. The Atlanta Thrashers. One of the most concerning things when it comes to the Bruins is their issues on the road. They lost 7-2 last night. They're now 9-14-3 away from the Garden this year. They have a minus 25 goal differential in those games. Here's where it gets real crazy. The Bruins have allowed 5 or more goals. That is 38.5% in 10 of their last 26 road games. They essentially give up 5 goals or more on the road this year. The Bruins have allowed 165 goals in 52 games this year. They've given up 5 goals or more in 13 of their 52 games. I did some Joe math on this. That is 25% of the time they give up 5 goals in a game. Just think about that. How do they have any chance with the fact that they can't score goals? Their power play issues. How can they compete when 25% of the time they give up 5 goals or more in a season? The Bruins franchise record for most goals allowed in the year is 306. That happened back in the early 60s. They've allowed 5 or more goals in 34 of 70 games. That was back in the 60s. So almost 50% of the time back in the 60s, they gave up 5 goals or more. Well, the Bruins are on pace this year to give up 260 goals. Now, they will see, or at least should see, some improvements on the blue line when Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm come back. And that's after the Four Nations face-off, which, by the way, Charlie McAvoy is going to play in that. But just think about those numbers for a minute here. They are terrible on the road. 9-14-3. And they've allowed 5 or more goals in 10 of 26 games. Do the math. It's 39%. 39% of the time when they play on the road, they give up 5 goals or more in 10 of 26 games. What happened to the Bruins' identity? It was Ullmark. It was Swayman. It was their defense. Now they have no identity. They have no leadership whatsoever. They really don't have any young guys coming up. We now have to start looking at who the next coach will be for this team. Because I don't think Don Sweeney's going to make it through this one. Cam Neely talked about 2 paths. The only path is the future for the Bruins. I don't know who the next head coach will be. I don't know. I don't know who the next GM will be. Does Cam Neely even hang around here? I brought this up last night when me and Skaz talked about this. When it comes to the Jacobs, who are absentee owners, what they want to do is lean on someone that's there every day that can at least give information back to the owner. I don't see how Cam Neely is removed from that. I don't. Like, the owner of the Bruins needs, it's like a Mr. Burns Smithers situation. You need a Smithers. Right now it's Cam Neely. I think he sticks around. I think it's Sweeney that gets fired, and it's a new GM, and it's a new coach. And if you ask me, well, if you're going to fire them, Joe, who do you have in mind? Oh, this is where things get really tough. And this is what I mean about the future of the team. They have to start thinking about it. And by the way, this is the opening take, which is brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. ESPN Bet Sportsbook, now the official sponsor of Joe Murray's opening take. I'm Joe Murray. But just think of the future here. Do you really want Don Sweeney being the guy making those moves? And now, we now have to start making lists of people that can take this thing over. And today, we got a name for you. Zdeno Chara, back with the Bruins as a consultant. We were spitballing names last night. Sean Thornton's with the Panthers. I mentioned Chris Kelly on the staff. Hell, Skaz was mentioning Keith Gretzky. I don't know what the future is. All I can tell you is, working these games here at night, they are brutal. And I even play games to myself and say, are they going to go over 4.5 goals tonight or not? They've been going over. Again, 26 games on the road. They've given up 5 goals or more 10 times. How can you survive giving up 5 goals or more in 40% of your road games? And 25% of the time on the season, you're giving up 5 goals or more. The identity's gone. It's over here for the Bruins. I don't know where they go. And quite frankly, I don't want Don Sweeney's hands on any of the potential moves for the future of the Boston Bruins. It might have to be Cam Neely who takes over. Similar situation happened years ago with Peter Chiarelli. He was out. Sweeney got 3 first-round picks. You know what happened there. If you look at the 10-year run, congrats on keeping the team in the playoffs year in and year out, going to a Stanley Cup and losing, being the best team of all time and getting bounced in the first round and constantly getting bounced and outpowered to go out and have money in free agency, bring in the best center and the best defenseman, and last night the guy's on the ice for 3 of the goals. It didn't work, Don Sweeney. The Don Sweeney experiment in Boston failed. It didn't work. Now, who takes over? There's no more identity. Sweeney's future's in doubt for sure. Who's the next coach? That's where I'm at for the rest of the season with the Boston Bruins. We'll start it there at 617-779-0985. We're on YouTube as well. Again, the opening take brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. They'll be doing the opening take here on the show. Skaz is here. We'll get his thoughts. I got more numbers for you on the Bruins on the road this year. I already told you the percentages. I'll give you the actual records over the last couple of years. And also, those franchise numbers. Whew, they're certainly climbing up the ranks on some of the worst in Bruins history. Celtics play tonight as well, and I got some football notes for you before we get out of here. I'm Joe Murray here on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
8.1 to go before a quiet flight home. Face-off win at center ice here by the Sabres. And they'll just eat the puck here and let the clock mercifully run out. A 7-2 win for Buffalo here on their home ice. As the Bruins now just one win in their last 10.
Things off the Grandy Max, but like we still work. Like we're still here. We still do research. We cut up videos. We write articles. We do shorts, reels, you name it. We do it all. So we actually have to like sit through these horrible games. And I mentioned last week, I they had some pretty positive efforts against like Ottawa, Colorado, right? But then they play New Jersey, and I have to go watch Shawshank Redemption, and it's the Brooks was here scene, and I just wanted to make a graphic that said Bruins were here. I thought it was kind of funny, Maybe we can work on that later on tonight with our intern Trent. But anyways, the Bruins have problems. I just went over all the numbers for you. Like they are not the road warriors. Like they go on the road and things get tight, and I blame leadership for that. Obviously, interim head coach Joe Sacco. This isn't his fault, by the way. Like to think that this guy could have turned it around. There was a little spark there. Is he a coach in the league? I think so. Head coach, Still wait to see on that one. But there's no doubt about the Bruins now need a new direction. Like they've lost their identity. Their identity was their goaltending. And I want to credit Ty Anderson because he always said that from 98.5thesportshub.com. Once they traded Allmark, they traded Allmark for, we know the story. I don't have to go over it with you. Now, they would have had to pay some sort of option, a guarantees deal or something to that degree if they didn't trade him by a certain deadline. So that's why it happened. That's where I'm going with this. They still could have kept him. They still could have signed Swayman. They still could have done it. Instead, they decided to bring in Korpisalo and get two free agents that just aren't working. Like Zadorov last night, I don't need to see any more of him. I've had enough. He's too slow. He's too big. He mucks it up when it doesn't matter. He stinks. And he's here for a very, very long time unless you ship off a young piece with him or a draft pick. But he's a huge problem. When I tell you they give up goals, he was on the ice last night for 3 of them. So let me give you a couple more numbers here. And I do see you guys lined up on the phone line, 617-779-0985. The Bruins' road record by season. Let's just go back a couple of years. Okay, this is Montgomery. In 22-23, they went 31-8-2 on the road. That's pretty good. 2023, which was last year, they went 23-9 on the road. This year, 9-14-3. I mentioned this pace that they're on. The Bruins are on a pace to allow 260 goals. Since the start of the century, only 2 Bruins teams have allowed 250 or more goals. 05-06, they gave up 258 and 285 back in 06-07. If you go back to the 02-03 team that I referenced that went 31-8-2, they gave up 174 goals that year. This year's team will pass that total with 10 more goals allowed. So 2 more road games, they're going to go over the total from 22-23. Just think about the last 25 years of the Bruins. The Bruins have allowed at least 5 goals in a game more than 10 times in 9 different seasons. Just think about it. The Bruins have allowed at least 5 goals in a game more than 10 times in 9 different seasons. They've done it already this year. I can keep going over the historical numbers of how bad they are. I think you get it. They're giving up way too many goals. Whether it's their goaltending or defense, don't give me the injuries to Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy. This thing has been going on all year long. All year. I don't know how they fix it. I don't know who's next. I'll take suggestions, but right now, it's very bad. We'll go to you at 617-779-0985. Not sure if you have anything else to add on that, Skaz, but why don't I give you those numbers? They're really, really bad. And, I'm going to relate all these to the Celtics, too, who struggle at home. We'll do that coming up on the other side here. Anything else to add on the Bruins? Because right now, we can talk Senior Bowl, right? Do you want to talk about the Red Sox, search for something else? I think it's worth really honing in on what is wrong with the Bruins and even the Celtics for that matter.
You're not pumped Chara's back, Joe?
In a way, I only liked it because last night we were spitballing it. Has anyone come up with a list yet of maybe potential candidates I'm talking about Montgomery, Burns, Smithers. In this case, this would be, Cam Neely is Smithers. Could Chara be the next Smithers? Is that where they're going with this? Do you think that's what's next?
I have no idea what's next, Joe, and I think that's kind of part of the frustration is the Bruins are stuck in, what I believe to be one of the worst spots in sports where you're not at the top of the league ready to compete, winning a title, but you're also not at the bottom of the league where you're going to get, a top 5 pick where you could get a Celebrini or a Bedard or someone that could, kickstart your franchise back in the right direction. They're kind of right in the middle right now. They're hanging around that playoff bubble, and yeah, they might sneak in, but I don't believe this is a cup contender. Not at all. Not when you lose like that to Buffalo on the road. So they're kind of right in that mediocre, 2010s Atlanta Hawks spot, the worst place in sports. So they need to pick a direction, and I think right now that direction is sell, to rebuild, blow it up, and the roster, the front office, all of it. They're not in a good place right now, and you see it on the ice. I mean, we listened to RJ and Bob last night. Bob was distraught at times last night.
I don't think I've ever heard him like that.
Disgusted with the team's effort, their play. Paterka, or the guy walking down the middle of the ice twice. And how can you not just be apoplectic about this team?
2 hat tricks.
Yeah, two, Joe. Not one, 2.
2. They weren't enough hats of the amount of people that went to the game last night to even do the second hat trick.
Sabres might have scored more goals than hats that were thrown on the ice.
Think about this. Hat trick happened. The minimum amount of people that were there, because there wasn't many, they threw their hat for the first hat trick. When it was the second hat trick, they had nothing. What are they going to throw? And we made a joke about this last night, but the last time that Buffalo has done that, it was 2008 against the Atlanta Thrashers. That's when Fred was working at Blimpies. Fred Dutcher was working at Blimpies probably back then. I think. I don't know. I just wanted to throw in a Blimpies reference. It's bad, everybody. I don't know what's next. So we crushed the Patriots, right, for being bad and bring up numbers. I'm on the Bruins this is Don Sweeney. Skaz, the 10 years of Don Sweeney, was it a success or a failure? Because I can look at it and tell you, Stanley Cup's going there is good. Being the best team of all time, good. Right? It all looks good. Did you win?
Best regular season team of all time.
Sorry. Did they win a championship? No. Is that now? Was it unsuccessful because they didn't win a championship?
Yeah, the goal is to win championships, not be very good in the regular season and get your gate money for home playoff games. That might be the goal of ownership. That is not the goal of what fans are looking for, what the players are looking for.
Failure. I put a fail. F. And your first year as the GM, you have 3 first-round picks. I know that was 10 years ago. I know it was. But now look. It finally caught up to you. All the first-round picks you would trade away at the deadline. And I will admit this. 2 years ago, management did everything it could for this team to win, and it was the players that let them down. I fully agree with that. Now where they're at, signing Lindholm, Zadorov, maybe the Allmark move was franchise-altering because they certainly have no more identity. 617-779-0985. Patrick's in Weymouth. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, what's going on? Appreciate the show and wanted to just call in about the Bruins fraternity. Yeah. They seem to never break away from that, so I don't even want to hold my breath. But you said then he went and started brainstorming names. Go look up David Carl from University of Denver. Like, God, dream scenario.
So
just back up the Bruins truck and bring him over to Boston.
We did this last night. They got the last guy that did that. Remember Montgomery was there and then went to Dallas and then got fired.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the name. Should we eliminate that name going forward?
Look, I get it. He's the hottest name in hockey right now. He's done an incredible job at Denver, incredible job with the men's junior team. But he's gonna get a huge contract. Like when he leaves Denver for the NHL, he's probably going to be one of the highest paid coaches in the entire league because of his pedigree, because of what he's done. He deserves it. And I just don't see the Bruins being the team that's going to pony up for, basically, an unknown at the NHL level.
I agree. Maybe we should start working on some names. Joe's on the South Shore. Hey, Joe.
Hey, what's going on? I think when I really lost kind of faith in this team, well, not really lost faith, but I kind of tuned out, was you went into St. Louis, right? And you won Game 6 after you lost Game 5 where Nola Chari took that leg check, that questionable no call. How do you come home and lose Game 7? Just, you know what I'm saying? We're going to look back and be like, that's one they had to have. And could it almost excuse the way they are now, if that makes sense, if you win that cup?
So I'll say this, right? Oh, my God. Yeah, it would absolutely. This is what I mean about Don Sweeney, Joe. Like, it's a fail because he didn't win a championship. It's a fail. But if he does win, in the end, you would say Don Sweeney's been good here, and I wouldn't be talking about firing him. I'd be talking about he's the guy I want to rebuild with.
Can I retort that really quick?
Go ahead. That's what we do here.
2 seconds ago, you said the players let him down. You know what I'm saying?
But you mentioned 18. I mentioned 22 that they let him down. Do you see what I'm saying? You brought up the St. Louis game. You brought up St. Louis. That's what I meant by that. But in 22, they went all in. That was not management's fault. That was the players' fault.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're right there. You know what I'm saying? That's Game 7 in the Garden. No, I know,
but it was 2018, and Sweeney built it back up to be the best regular season of all time, and the players blew it.
Oh, I know.
But we can't compare 22 and 18. You get what I'm saying? Like 18, they blew it, they lost, and they gave up another goal on a line change last night, and I was triggered by 2018, just like you are.
Marchand's line change, that was nice.
Yeah. Yes. Just to be clear, 2018, that was their shot. They were the favorites. They were better. They got out-muscled by St. Louis. St. Louis was not a better team. They just completely outplayed them. They played what you would think is Boston Bruins hockey. Oh, now we're going back to that, Skaz. Oh, this is really triggering. This is triggering right now. I'm triggered right now. Because 2 years ago, they were loaded. And at the deadline, they gave up first-round picks for, like, Bertuzzi, right? They made these moves to really double down. And they lost. They should have thought about blowing it up then. They probably should have thought about it. But you know what they did? They pieced some things together. Like last year, they really leaned into their goaltending. It was their identity. But you know what also was their identity? They still couldn't score. They still didn't have secondary scoring, and they still were weak. So what happened this year? Go sign the best center available in Lindholm. Go get the toughest defenseman that's out there. And they did that. And it's a fail. Like, this guy did everything he could. Literally, I look at Sweeney as he did everything he could. Man, did he blow that draft in 2015. But everything else, whew. But I think drafting in hockey really does mean something. And right? The draft means a lot. No, I think in hockey, this thing's like 10. This thing could take 10 years. This thing could take 8, 10 years. In football, they make them 5 years, right? Or 4 years on the rookie deal or whatever it is. Baseball might take some guys a really long time. Basketball, it's like you got to be ready right away to get that second deal. And then get your max. Hockey, these things, if you have a bad draft in 2015, I think they're lucky it finally caught them 10 years later. Jim's in Hingham. Hey, Jim.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good. I got some stats for you. 5 drafts, 111 NHL games out of 5 drafts. That was sourced by an ex-NHL player who stays local and will stay nameless. That's insane.
The draft. Listen, I think they are here because of their draft. This is what I'm saying. I think Sweeney really did everything he could. The trades, he signed all the right guys. The Allmark trade looked good on paper, right? Who would have thought it would have really just ruined their identity?
Yep.
So, any other stats for me?
No, I think that's a pretty good one. 5 drafts, 111 NHL games played out of those drafts.
Woof. Should add that to the article. You know what we should do is get dog woofs. If it's a little chirper, it's a little arf, arf, right? But if it's a real bad one, you get the big woof. Get the big dog woof. Maybe we could have dog level. You know how Maz has tears? We could have a woof tears.
Joe, who's better at drafting, Elliot Wolf or Don Sweeney?
Well, let's do some Joe math real quick. 111 games out of 5 drafts, right?
I would say not good.
I would say. Elliot Wolf had 1 draft, right? Drake May played. Take Drake May out of it. Who else played? Their linemen, no. The wide receivers, no.
Oh, those guys were awesome this year, Joe. Come on.
Am I missing a rookie here? Oh, man. Skaz, so we're going 5 years versus 1 year right now.
And take the last 5 years of the Patriots. Who's better at drafting?
Oh, man.
I think it's slight edge Patriots, but that's not a conversation I want to be in.
I didn't think we'd be making this comparison right now. All right. We're going to get into the Celtics. They're at home tonight. We'll continue to take your Bruins calls. Listen, I've worked here for 13 years. 13 years. This is the only place I have ever worked in my life where there are passionate Bruins fans. I always talk about this. When the Bruins lose, we're loaded with phone calls on the way home with people pissed. It's great. It's an amazing radio. And we're here for every Celtics game. When they win and we barely get any calls. Sometimes when they lose, we barely get any calls. But where are the Bruins fans right now? This is historically one of the worst defenses we've ever seen. The goalie just got one of the biggest contracts. And they did in a way, it's hard for me to really kill Sweeney over the moves he's made because you thought that they worked. The draft, you can absolutely blame him. That's probably why they're here right now, because of their draft. But the way that guy is somehow circumvented the salary cap, it's amazing they had a run like this. But in the end, from 2015 to 2025, fail. Don Sweeney's been a fail for 10 years. It's time to move forward. All right, we'll hit the headline here. I'm Joe Murray. You're listening to 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Sports Hub.
The Sports Hub. I'm Joe Murray. I was just talking to myself for a minute there. I had to switch headset movement things, whatever these are. The one over here doesn't work. I got to call Dennis now, and then this thing, and then here. We're back. I hear you now. I haven't heard enough from Bruins fans, though. Like, are we all just accepting now that they suck? It's not worth putting any more investment into it. This is the worst defense that you've ever seen. And that, quite frankly, Jeremy Swayman, who has had some nice games this month, giving up 5 goals or more 25% of the time on the season is just absolutely unacceptable. I know McAvoy's been out. I know Lindholm's been out for a long time. But you moved on from Allmark to free up cap space, to get scoring, blah, blah, blah. You lost your identity, and now Don Sweeney's going to be out of a job. So now what? Now where do they go? And today we hear that Zdeno Chara has been brought in as a consultant. Does that mean that he could be next in line next to a Cam Neely, or even Cam Neely being out, and now it's Chara there? But, again, I used to hear from you guys every night. We did postgame. I was here when they lost in 2018 for the Stanley Cup. I was here when they had the best regular season ever. I was here during preseason games when you didn't like what they looked like, and you would call. Now, they give up 5 goals or more 25% of the time, and on the road, they do it 40% of the time. But where's the outrage? Get into those Celtics numbers in a second here. We got Mark. He's in Pembroke. Hey, Mark.
What's up, Joe? How you doing, buddy?
Hey.
Hey, I just want to call about Don Sweeney. A long time ago, he should have been fired about that 2015 draft when, I mean, in all honesty, how do you stand on Kyle Connor, Buzz Allen, Shabbat all in a row? And then, like, also a funny thing nobody knows about, too, is he is a GM of this Team Canada in this Four Nations Cup. And he's got Brad Marchand on the team. And he's got no Connor Bedard or Macklin Celebrini. Like, is that, like, funny or not?
And I think McAvoy's going to play, even though he's barely played for the Bruins.
Yeah. I mean, in all these drafts, I mean, like, it's just absolutely insane. But
I wonder if that's his real quick, Mark. I wonder if that's, like, something he's like, hey, I'm going to be around these guys, you know, in about a week from now. And, I'm going to recruit. And I wonder if that's, like, a sell right now.
Yeah. But, how do you sit out Connor Bedard? I mean, like, I understand Celebrini's a rookie and stuff, but, I mean, that...
I would have taxi squatted him or something. I think... you know what? Talk about something that I haven't heard much about at all is the Four Nations face-off. The Beanpot gets more coverage than the Four Nations face-off. Right? And that might be the best hockey we get in the world in Boston this week. Or next week, whenever it is.
Yeah, a couple weeks. I mean, we're going to do Connor Bedard. Look at Team Canada's roster. Try and find a spot for Bedard. I like the kid, but he was coming off an injury and didn't start the season that great. If you want to criticize Sweeney, maybe look at the Bruins roster more than the Team Canada roster.
Yep. I agree. Brian's in the car. Hey, Brian.
Hey, so, I mean, there's always been talk about Don Sweeney, but I'm really just... Like, I commend the guy for staying, competitive over the last few years, especially, like you said, with the salary cap and everything. But this is a guy who's brought in people like David Backes, Matt Bolesky, and now Lindholm and Zadorov on high contracts, giving Swayman all this money. He does not know how to he's not allocating the money to the right guys. He's good at picking, like, those third-line, centers like Halla and stuff like that catch lightning in a bottle for a year. But when it comes to, like, the overall success of the team, it's not there.
I agree with you. I mean, but we've had 10 years now of it. And now they have we used to applaud them for, wow, look at them. Now that's going to be McAvoy and Pasternak and Swayman into the future. Yeah. How's that looking now? We'll take a quick break. Everyone likes to talk about the new coaching staff and whatever. Just wanted to bring up two interesting things regarding the Patriots coaching staff that I happened to just Wikipedia today. Hasn't been reported, so maybe I'll break it. How about that? Wikipedia told me. That's my source. I'll tell you what that is regarding the Patriots coaching staff. We'll do that next here on 98.5 The Sports Hub. right, back here, 98.5, the Sports Hub. We got Celtics Bulls coming up. I got some things for you on that in a minute here. We don't have enough time to get into it, but post-game, we'll let you hear some audio that we heard from Senior Bowl. I believe Greg Bedard from the Boston Sports Journal was on Felger Maj yesterday, and I know there's been some of the audio all over social today, which I finally saw. But I happened to just Google Mike Vrabel's kid, Tyler. He played football at Boston College, pretty good lineman. I think had a stint with the Atlanta Falcons, like he had a cup of coffee in the league. But BC has 3 guys in the draft this year, and I just overall wanted to just look back at it and where he ended up. When I went to Wikipedia and typed in his name, it said assistant offensive line coach of the New England Patriots. So, more nepotism in the league. Just wanted to throw that out there. The other night, I made a joke about Josh McDaniels' brother potentially joining the Patriots. And Skaz, what happened this week?
Bobby Slowick was fired, Joe, and Ben McDaniels was the pass game coordinator and the wide receivers coach for the Houston Texans. So, they're going to bring in a new OC. Imagine he would clean house. Maybe Ben McDaniels is looking for a job. Bring him in, too. Bring everybody in, all the family members.
So, Wiki does say that is the wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator for the Texans. Maybe that's why they haven't announced a wide receivers coach. Very interesting on that one. So, more Nepo babies. Just keep that in mind. A couple of things before we hand things off to Grandy and Max. The fourth quarter struggles, we know all about what the Celtics have been going through. But in clutch games, last season they went 21-12. It was very good. Since December of this year, it has gotten much worse. They're 3-5 in those clutch spots. It is not good. And I can give you more in this in post-game tonight, but the Jaylen Brown minutes on the court, right now they're a -13. When he's off the court, they're a +168. Jaylen Brown's a huge problem on the court for the team right now. And I'm not going to let Tatum off the hook because he was averaging 28 points a game. In the month of January, he's averaging 20.